This conference will now be recorded.
At 9:07, I call the special city council public hearing to order. Can we have the roll call?
Get your hats, name tag.
Counselor Barron?
Here.
Counselor Salceda?
Here.
Counselor Devine?
Present.
We are missing Counselor McClellan, who will not be present today. And we do have Counselor Smith on the line, and he will not count towards your quorum. The mayor is obviously present, and you have a quorum.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have just a few announcements. Just wanted to thank everybody for being patient with us during the last 10 days. I know it's been a little difficult with City Hall being closed, but we really appreciate everybody's support. And also, as of yesterday, there are 133 active cases for Blanco County. The current level of community transmission is high. And that concludes my announcements. We are going to move on to public comments. Are there any public comments? Okay.
Is anybody online?
Yes.
Is there anybody online that would like to comment?
Okay. We're going to move on to the public hearing. Public hearing on the adoption of the proposed 2021 ad valorem tax rate and levy of 0.3728 of all taxable property within the corporate city limits of the city of Blanco, Texas. And before we hear from citizens, we just wanted to do a quick PowerPoint by our city admin. So, Ms. Kinsler.
Mayor, thank you. I can go to the next slide, Ronnie. So I just want to make certain that you understand that the adopted rate for the city of Blanco for the 2020-2021 fiscal year is 0.3503. And that number is going to be important as we go down. The next slide. I wanted to make sure before I start talking about different terms that you understand what they are. So there's just an explanation for you of what the M&O rate would be. That's the piece of the tax that you all need to use to run the city. INS, as we've discussed, is your debt rate. You cannot submit a budget without making certain that you can pay in full your INS rate for the following fiscal year. The NNR, or the no new revenue rate, that's what you will hear called the effective tax rate. And the effective tax rate, what it does is it takes last year's values versus this year's values, and it shows you what you would need to adopt exactly so that there was no new revenue to the city. So that's called the NNR tax rate. And then finally, you have the voter approved tax rate, or the rollback rate, and that's the maximum allowed by law without voter approval. And that rollback rate is calculated usually by the county assessor. Rollback rate became really important 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, with Senate Bill 2 that was signed by Governor Abbott, that no city can exceed the rollback rate without taking the new rate to the voters. So what I'd like you to do now, you said you had your calculators with you. I want to show you how I calculate tax rates. So your effective rate, if you see up there, is 0.3127. So what we get those 2021 assessed values, you see the 219 million number? We get those values from the clerk, and then I like to give you revenues based on about a 97% collection rate. You probably will go a little higher than that, but it's just a good way to project conservatively. So the first thing that you do is you take the 219, 398, 876, and you get 97, and you multiply it by 97%. And so that means the calculated values that we're going to be working off today are 212,816,910. So here comes your math part. See, what you want to do is you want to take that 212 million number and you want to put that in your calculator. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. And then you want to multiply it by the effective tax rate. So multiply that, so you times 0.3127. And then you divide it by 100, because remember your taxes are per $100 valuation. And you should get a revenue of 665,478 if you did it right. Mayor did it. How's everybody else doing? Perfect. So on every one, the math is already done for you and you don't have to do it. I just wanted you to see how we got there, because I think that's important. So the lowest rate, the effective tax rate, is the 0.3127. The rollback rate, or the voter approved rate, without having to go out to the voter, is 0.3728. And if you look at that, that gives you what, about 130,000 extra dollars in revenue. So if you go to the next slide. Then what I put up there is last year's adopted rate. And it's 0.3503. So I also did the math for last year's rate, which gives you 745,000 of revenue. If you go up to the screen before real quick and let me look at that number, Ronnie, versus 793. So if you were to adopt the last year's rate, you can go down again. You adopt last year's rate, that's the difference right there. So you can adopt the NNR rate if you want. You can adopt the rollback rate. You can adopt last year's adopted rate, or if you want to do something a little different, if you want to try to possibly lower the taxes, you don't have a whole lot of wiggle room in your budget, but you could, I don't know, you could propose a 0.34, whatever you want to propose, and I can do the math for you on that and tell you what that would give you.
Since we haven't, if I had ask a few questions, since we haven't completed our budget yet, and we don't know what our anticipated expenditures are, looking at our anticipated need for revenues is, how do we figure out what we need until we know what we need?
So this is just a public hearing. I'm giving you the options here.
Okay.
Your budget, as of last time, was completed. I've just spoken with Public Works this morning, and it appears there's some other stuff that's going to need to be added to the budget. So that will be done today, and you will get the budget on Tuesday. And also on Tuesday will be an item on the agenda for you all to adopt a tax rate. Okay?
So this will give us our options, and then once we see what our expenditures look like, then we'll know which of those rates or where in between we need to be to cover what we need to have covered.
That's correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
So if you go to the next slide. So I wanted to show you, if you were a Blanco homeowner and your home appraised at 250,000. And what I used in the rollback rate, the very highest rate that y'all could charge. I wanted you to see the difference in, or annually for a homeowner. And then also the difference monthly for a homeowner. So I don't need to read those, but you can see a 250 versus a 500,000 home appraisal, that would be your annual difference. So $112 if it's a $500,000 home and $56 if it's a $250,000 home. And then that would be the monthly difference below that. Next screen. Okay, so this is the way that we break down taxes. And I broke it down just two different ways for you. This is just interesting to me. The reason, first of all, that your INS is higher than your M&O. But then the other thing that's brings your M&O down is because some of your, two of your bonds are actually paid out of M&O for the enterprise side. And we've talked about that before and how we might try to get that fixed. That's a big fix right there. And so, yeah, the asterisks were there just so you just want to make sure everybody sees that your debt service is much higher than your M&O. But what you do is you basically, you get the 0.3728, if that's what you all adopt. We know what our INS has to be. We're given that. So you have to have an INS of 0.2073 in order to pay your bonds this year. So what you would do is you would just take that from the applicable tax rate there. So you'd take it from the 0.3728, or the below example, you'd take it from the 0.3503, you deduct 2073, and M&O ends up with 0.143 and 0.165, depending on whatever tax you approve. But M&O is very reasonable. The next slide. So I just got online. A lot of these are FY22 proposed. Some of them are FY22 adopted, but that kind of gives you an idea of what some of the other cities are doing. And you know, really, you're lower than everybody here, with the exception of Bulverde. And depending on what you adopt, possibly Buda. So it depends how they're doing that. I don't know how their city is set up, but they would have more sales tax than you do based on the businesses that are around there. They also might be collecting, fines and fees. They might have some grants that they're using. There's so many different answers. And then the other thing that they could be doing on their fees, they could be charging more on their fees and making, some of it up that way. I don't know. But yeah, that's a very low ad valorem rate. Now, I don't know what Bulverde's going to propose this year is their ad valorem rate, but it's not going to be where ours is. Next slide. So the recommendation is, I would love to tell you about the fiscal impact, but I don't know about that because I don't know what it's going to be until you all adopt a rate. You're the policy board. And so both mine and the finance director's recommendation is that that you do not approve the effective rate of 0.3127. We recommend that you either adopt the rollback rate, last year's adopted rate, or whatever rate the council determines. That's in your lap right now. Next slide. Oh, that's it.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So
Yeah.
why do you and Linda, why is that your opinion? Can you share a little bit more about that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. You need the revenue. So much of your general fund revenue is going to pay bonds for the enterprise side. And if you didn't have that, I think you could adopt the effective.
So I'm sorry, so I'm in trying to understand this a little bit about the issue of the debt. Ideally, our enterprise fund would cover its own debt service since the debt is all for water and sewer. We've not been doing that, so we've been covering the INS, which is for all, the majority, if not all, are for water, wastewater, so should be under the enterprise fund, but it hasn't been. If we were going to try to get it over there, it would mean our water, wastewater rates would have to go way up. And while it looks like they'll have to go up some to try to transition, are you suggesting that in order to get all of that over into that fund, the rate increases would be so high that we're going to continue to have to supplement that for a while through the general fund and transition into that? Or how do we get the INS out of general fund? Because it doesn't belong there.
So Mayor, Councilor Barron, that was a loaded, there's a lot of
Yeah.
questions that I'm hearing in there. So please, if I have not addressed everything, tell me what you need, what else you need. But I've been working with your bond counsel, he's great, and trying to understand what the heck happened. And so I don't think that you would be able to put both of the bonds on the enterprise side right away, but maybe you can do one. I think that's possible. And so he's working on the numbers for me. Right now, while you're adopting a budget and you're adopting a tax rate, we shouldn't go there.
Okay.
It's exactly, because I need to know what kind of rate you're going to adopt for your utility users before I can give you advice on that, because I don't know what kind of revenue you'll have on the enterprise side. So I don't mean to dodge your question. It's just I don't have all the information yet of what y'all are going to do. Once you all make up your mind, then on the rates, then I'll be able to tell you if we can move anything over there or not. And actually, when we're looking at the rates, I can calculate and let you know probably how much it will cost to move one of them over there.
Okay.
But if you move two, I think it would be a very, very steep increase for your citizens, and I know not one of you want that.
So which two INS, which two are getting paid by INS?
The
Water.
wastewater.
Okay, that's like 240,000 or?
No, I'm sorry, it's the water. Hope I don't have them backwards.
That's what I kind of understood. Since
It's about
the
2
water
million.
plant's not complete yet, that's why we really can't move it over because we're not getting rid of that.
Well, you can't move it over if you don't have the funds.
Well,
But if y'all,
And if I remember, it's been a while since we did the budget, but we did have an excess of, there was like 240,000 left over on the enterprise side. So it's kind of a wash. I mean, it seemed like we had the money there, but the INS, I don't know if you remember when we did. It's
so,
been a while since we did the budget. There was
Yeah.
like the 240,000.
right. So Mayor, Councilor Salceda, there was a little bit of a fund balance left in there. The problem is we're still working on figuring out how to pay for the clarifier.
Right.
We're still working on, I found out from Public Works this morning, there's some other expenditures that we need on that side. So that money's gonna get swallowed up.
Yeah, well, I guess I was just saying that we should probably not as far as you're thinking, counting on, because we did raise water rates and sewer rate, and so I think, we may be close. It's just hard to tell until we get the numbers all right. But, and the clarifier is kind of
Yeah.
one off that hopefully we don't see every year.
Yep.
That expense, but I'm hoping we're not as far off as we think we are.
Yeah. I
Where we
hope
have to
not.
double water, something
Oh,
like that.
I know. And I think, again, my concern is when our utility, we're going to have to get there eventually, but the home, the property owners can probably more easily absorb some of the areas than people who have to pay their utilities, who
Right.
don't have their renters, their senior citizen centers, they're all of the people out there that we want to be sensitive to. So working our way there. Can you tell us, Kelly, how the rollback rate, because again, we want to keep rates, obvious tax rates, as low as we can keep them. But there are optimistically a number of grants and opportunities and funding that have shown up this year because of COVID and because of programs that are occurring that are going to help us. Those may not show up again next year or the year after. So in terms of being able to build reserves so that when that unexpected money doesn't show up, that we'll be able to function without having a way big tax increase at some point, a year or 2 years down the line. What is the amount? Is it Is the rollback rate, do I recall that it's an amount, it cannot exceed creating more than $500,000 in additional revenue over your prior year? Is that what the rollback rate, how it, do you remember how that's set?
Yes, I do. The rollback rate it's confusing to calculate, but depending on the size of the city, it does tell you how much you can actually, what's the maximum amount you can create.
Okay.
And this is a smaller city, so I don't want to say the amount because I'm worried that I'm wrong.
Okay, so it is the created
But
amount.
the idea that you have, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Great explanations. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, at 9:28 o'clock a.m., I am opening a public hearing on the adoption of the proposed 2021 ad valorem tax rate and levy of 3.3728 of all taxable property within the corporate city limits of the city of Blanco. Do we have any public comments? Do we have any online?
Counselor Smith doesn't have anything.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have a question for Kelly, or I understand that the current evaluation for our taxes is 2.19 million. And that's the property value is from the assessment from the county appraisal district. But what was it last year?
Mayor, Councilor Smith, are you talking about the
Property value.
property values? They're in that PowerPoint. I gave you the property values.
But
I
I'm
did not give you I did not give you the property values last year, and I don't know them. Sorry, I can get that information for you though.
I was just wondering what % increase we had there. I mean, because that's what's allowed us to effectively to maintain the same revenue source would be at a lower tax rate. And I was just curious as how much, additional property had been assessed and the increase in values was.
Mayor, Councilor Smith, I will get the last year's value for you by the next meeting, or I'll email it out to each of you.
All right, thank you very much. That was the only question I had. Thank you.
And tell me again, effective tax rate, what the effective tax rate means?
So the effective tax rate means that you take the total of appraised value from 2021, that fiscal year, and what the tax rate that you had last year is 0.3503. And so in order to raise the exact same amount of money that you did last year from 0.3503, it's called the NNR, or the no new revenue, or the effective tax rate, and it gives you the exact percentage, or very close to the percentage that you would need to assess in order to have the exact same amount of revenue.
So it's the same name as the no new revenue.
That's correct.
Oh,
They call it effective, no new
okay.
revenue. Yeah,
They
exactly.
call it one thing.
I know,
I'm so confused.
I know. Sorry.
Okay, so it's the same thing as the no new revenue.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, last chance for public comments.
All right, I'm back again. Well, let's see. I guess Kelly, after considering what I asked, it looks like it's going to be 10.7% because that's the difference in the adopted and effective, and that would be only due to an increase in assessed values.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilor Smith, I didn't follow.
Okay.
And don't forget, I don't have the PowerPoint in front of me either.
All right. Well, but I've got my notes in front of me. So,
Okay.
but I guess the difference in the effective rate and the adopted rate, when I'm going off adopted and not off, I'm incorrect. Never mind. If you'll send me that email, then that'll answer my question. I thought I'd answered it myself, but I did not.
Mayor, Counselor Smith, I will send the email. Thank you.
Thank you.
At 9:32 o'clock a.m., I am closing the public hearing. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Councilmember Barron has moved that we adjourn. Is there a second?
I will send.
Councilmember Devine has seconded. At 9:32, we are adjourned.